Iwundu, the chairman FCT Tax Practitioners Association, is joining me right now. Welcome to you, Mr. Iwundu, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
We're looking at Nigeria's tax system. In the past 2 weeks have been one way or the other, because you can't talk of macroeconomy or you can't talk of the economy without how the government is expected to generate revenue. The government sells oil, generates FX, government gets money also through taxes here in Nigeria. Let me ask you this. What do you think about the general, the notion about taxation in Nigeria?
Yeah, thank you very much. Honestly, Nigerians are not used to paying tax. And a lot of campaign has to be done to convince Nigerians to start paying taxes. And this because of the fact that there is no social security provided by the government. And also the enforcement of tax is also weak. There's also poor administration of taxes in Nigeria, both at the state and at the federal level. Right now, most Nigerians don't even know what tax is all about. There are so many traders that are trading in the market all over the whole world, all over Nigeria. They don't know how much they're supposed to pay as tax and where they're supposed to go and pay their taxes. And sometimes when you interact with them and say, have you paid your taxes? And they'll ask you, who am I going to pay my taxes to? To government. What is government doing for me? How much am I going to pay as taxes? So I think, I feel that government has a lot of work to do in order to convince Nigerians to pay taxes. Right now, the percentage of people that are paying taxes in Nigeria is too poor. The last time the Minister of Finance was quoted by saying that it's only 40 million Nigerians that are paying their taxes. And out of these 40 million Nigerians, the bulk of that 40 million Nigerians are those who are paying taxes through pay as you earn, meaning that they are even not paying it voluntarily, indirectly. Exactly, it's deducted from like all these organizations, deduct salary, tax from the salary and pay them. And honestly speaking, these people you are deducting their taxes and pay. If you give them the cash to go and pay, they will not pay. So I think what we should emphasize in this country is voluntary tax compliance, which has been achieved in UK and in US. Possibly when we get to those areas, we can see the reason why such countries have been able to achieve voluntary tax compliance.
So that brings me to the question of this voluntary asset and income declaration scheme, which the government launched in July of this year. Do you think that will go a long way in mitigating that challenge of voluntary payments?
Yeah, it will help, but I still have my doubts because so many Nigerians are hardened in the sense that I'm not going to declare my asset, I'm not going to declare my income for what? What is government doing for me? And again, government has a challenge. The challenge is that there is no data. There is no accurate data to know how many people in Nigeria are supposed to pay tax. You know, in the United States today, you have a social security number. Once you have that social security number, government is monitoring you. If you get job, government knows that you have gotten job. Whether it's paid employment, whether it's paid. So you can't say you won't pay tax because you're already in the net. But today, the question is, does government know the exactly number of people that don't pay tax, exactly number of people? And if they know them, do they know where they reside? Do they know where their offices are? So I think one of the things federal government and the state will do is to see how they can generate the data of those that are taxable. For example, in the state, most state governments are not interested in making sure they generate internal revenue through taxation.
Is that not changing?
I have not seen much effort on that. most of this effort, like voluntary assets and income declaration, is done by federal government through Federal Inland Revenue Service. Right now, go to so many states, there is no proper plan, no proper design, no proper model of how do we get people to pay taxes. There's no proper model. If you go to so many markets, so many places, so many businesses, there's no proper model as how do we get people to pay tax? How do we educate people to pay tax?
The question is, because I've listened to all what you've said, you mentioned the issue of social security, weak enforcement. You also talked about poor administration of taxes. If you take a look at these that you've said, it anchors on two things. That is the payer and the person that you're paying to. That's the government and the payer, isn't it? Yeah. You've, in your own remarks, you did say that Nigerians are averse to paying taxes because at the end of the day, what's government doing for me? All those tax challenges we're having, do you think we've been able to recognize where the issues are? And all the policies of government around tax administration, tax policy, is it really hitting the nail on the head?
Yeah.
Can we go far?
Yeah, I want to say something. Can we take a little look at the UK tax model and how they're getting it right? Now, if you get to UK, you observe that the tax administration is being anchored by the Royal Majesty
yes.
Revenue and Customs. Yeah. Now, in their model, UK, at that level, they are taking care of all taxes, both personal income tax, corporation tax, capital gain tax, inheritance tax, property tax, all the taxes. The only tax they left for the council, for the county, that is the municipals, is property
like
tax. Yeah. Yes, it's property tax. Although there are two types of property tax in UK. If you sell your house now, you pay stamp duty tax to the federal. But if you want to, for the annual property tax, you have to pay to the local government council. Now, what are they doing in UK? For example, the national insurance contribution, which is the second highest contributor of tax in UK, because the highest contributory aspect of tax in UK is personal income tax. Personal income tax in the UK amount to about 30% of the total tax collected, followed by national insurance contribution, which is about 25%. Now, there, the government has provided social security, where at primary school is free education, at secondary school is free education. You go to hospital for minor sicknesses is free. Even testing malaria, testing this is free. Even there's a fringe benefit for those that are unemployed. Now, that is number one. Then number two, there's also tough penalty if you are not paying. Now, people are willing to pay because they see what government is doing. Now, there are two things that brings about voluntary compliance. One is provision of social amenities. Yes. And the other one is enforcement, to show there is punishment. In a country where people are not being punished for not doing the right thing, that country doesn't move forward. In UK today, if you don't pay your taxes, once you're in their tax net, you don't pay your taxes. The penalty for not paying that taxes could amount to 100% of the tax you didn't pay. It could lead to closure of your business, or if you go to prison. So people don't want trouble. And moreover, they see what government is doing. There's provision of social amenities, and there's provision for social services. So now, for you to design a model to work in Nigeria, we should look at how can government be able to provide these social benefits for people, and at the same time get tough in enforcement.
So which should be first, the chicken or the egg? The chicken or the egg?
Yeah, no, if you ask me to say, two of them should be going
hand in hand.
Hand in hand. In as much as they are telling people to pay your taxes, and as they are paying, you go ahead and begin to do those things, and they begin to see it. I could remember in Lagos, people were wondering how they were able to get it right in Lagos, that in Lagos so many people are paying taxes. There was a time in Lagos that they have to furnish and upgrade some of the government schools. And parents were rushing to the schools to, make sure their children are there because it's up to standard. And they will ask you, if you want your child to come into this school, show me your tax certificate. And parents were rushing to go and pay tax because they want their child to attend quality and free education. It becomes a matter of because what people are asking is that, what am I going to gain from paying my taxes?
But the issue also is that who are those you are taxing? Because if you take a look at the country, the way we are constructed right now, as in terms of scaling, you see that a lot of businesses are informal, largely informal. A lot of people are also unemployed. You have a lot of small businesses that do not have this formal way of doing business.
Of
so they don't even know, businesses don't even know where the tax authorities are. They don't know what exactly to do. How can you begin to tell those people, for example, even if you're a business and you've not made so much money in a year, let alone paying taxes from your profits, where do you start from? Where do you start from?
Let me start by saying this. In the UK, for example, there are certain income, or even in the US, there are certain small income you'll be earning. You won't be allowed to pay
taxes, yes. I
like
think
in
about
UK,
3,900
yes, UK you have to up to 11,000 pounds.
Yes.
Now, in Nigeria, we don't have that. Yes. In Nigeria, there is no exemption. Even if you are earning 10,000 naira a month, the law doesn't exempt you from paying tax. The minimum you can pay is 1%. Because our allowance here is 20% of your total earned income plus 200,000. So where you earn 10,000, for example, in a month, in a year, that means 120. It's not even up to the 200,000 plus total 20% of total earned income they're supposed to give you as an allowance. So when they see that the allowance they're giving you is more than the income you're earning, so they will now go back to tax you on 1%. Meaning that if you're earning 10,000, you pay 100 naira as tax.
Yes.
Exactly. So the Nigerian tax system, the only reason why you won't pay tax is you are not earning any income. But if you are earning any income, if it is 5,000 naira a month, you are going to pay 1% of it, which is 50 naira.
50 naira.
Now, what we are saying is this. We have so many informal businesses in Nigeria, agreed. But I don't expect government to start pursuing all these informal businesses and start looking for them. Let us start from those that are formal. Let us start from those that have registered. Have you been able?
There are some registered companies that have not made money. There are some registered businesses that are out of businesses.
That's what I'm saying. Let us start from registered businesses. For example, the Federal Land Revenue Service can liaise with the Corporate Affairs Commission. Let us have the whole registered business in Nigeria. Let us have the whole limited liability companies in Nigeria. Let us have the whole enterprise business in Nigeria and begin to get this business, to know those who are doing business or those who are not doing business. And let me tell you something about the Nigerian tax system. The law prescribes that whether you are doing business or not, you should file your returns. That's why in CAC today, if you are not filing your returns, when you go, they are going to charge you penalty. In Federal Land Revenue, the law stipulated both in CAC and FRS, after 18 months of your business incorporation, you should start filing your returns. Even if you are not doing any business, you can call your auditor or your tax consultant to prepare what we call statement of affairs. A statement of affairs is a financial statement showing that you have not done any business, and you go and file it. Failure to file it, there will be penalty. And that's why today some companies will come to FIRA, say they want tax clearance certificate, and they have not done business, but they'll give them 1 or 2 million to pay because over the years they have not been filing their returns.
I was coming to that. How do you now reconcile a company that has not done business, or a company that doesn't even know its way around and goes to FIRS to get a tax clearance, and the company is told pay 2 million naira? What should the company do?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Now the issue there is that there's lack of enlightenment to our taxpayers. Some taxpayers believe that since my company is not doing anything, why should I bother myself to not paying tax? Why should I file returns? Because there are two important returns to FIRS. One is the annual returns, which is filed annually every year, showing that they have done business or not. Then the other one is VAT returns. VAT returns is the monthly returns. So, and you are free to file any returns. Even failure to file any returns is penalty. So now what I feel, what people do in FIRS is that when you get to FIRS and present a company that have not done business and they
They
bring
just give you
they
straight
bring these
away.
penalties, you negotiate with them. You negotiate and see how much they can be able to waive for you, and you pay for them to give you a tax clearance certificate. But the fact remains that the era of you pay 20,000 or 25,000 per operational levy and they give you tax clearance certificate is gone, because they are looking for money. Formally, if a company has not done business, when you go to FIRS and pay 20,000 or 25,000 per operational levy, they issue a tax clearance certificate to you. But now they are looking at it that even though this company has not done business, let us start making money from this company for the fact that the company has not been filing their returns. And they calculate the penalties.
But how much sense does it now make to tell those companies to pay like 2 million naira? Because I've heard a lot of complaints from businesses. Oh, I go to FIRS, they tell me to pay 2 million. They tell me to pay so million.
Of course, there's no company, nobody, I don't think there's any person that have not made money from his company and we decide to go and pay 2 million. We, as a FCT Tax Practitioners Association, there's a time we are talking to FIRS. So there's a time you need to give some concessions to these companies, because if you are strict that they must surely pay these penalties of 1 million, 2 million before you give them tax clearance certificate, most of these companies will abandon their companies and go and register new ones. And that is what is currently going on. Because if I have my company, I have not done any business with this company, and after 5 or 6, 7 years or 10 years, I approach FIRS for tax clearance certificate. They say, no, go and pay so amount. This company I have not made money with. Some consultants will advise you, better forget about this company, go and register a new company and start afresh. So we have to be very careful. The tax authorities have to be very careful and have to give concession to these companies so that they can keep their companies. Because some of them are ready to abandon these companies, register new one, and start afresh. And that will lead to so many abandoned companies in the right now as I'm talking to you. There are so many companies that have been abandoned in Federal Revenue Service. Time has come when the revenue authorities wake up and begin to get these companies and give them concession to continue with these companies. Of course, so many people have companies in this. There's a person I know, he has more than 20 companies. Some have 10, 5, 15. So if you feel that you don't give them tax clearance in this and that, they will leave it and go. And let me tell you one thing. For over a decade, I've been into the tax practice, tax consultancy. I've never seen anybody who walked into my office and say, I'm a good Nigerian. Just tell me, this is my income, let me pay tax voluntarily. It has never happened. In fact, voluntary compliance in Nigeria is almost at zero. People only come in because maybe they have contracts to bid. Or they went to embassy, they say bring tax clearance certificate. They went to buy land, they say bring this. There must be 1 or 2 inhibiting factors. And they'll go say, let's go and meet this tax consultant. He will help you do this, he will help you that. But ordinarily,
people don't do that.
People hardly do. So what government should do, I feel what government should do is to begin to have a strategy where you can now convince Nigerians to voluntarily come and pay tax without forcing them, without intimidation. Because as far as UK and US is concerned, they have gotten to that level where you don't need to intimidate anybody to pay tax. Do you know that in the United Kingdom today, a medium-sized company files their annual return within 14 working days of the accounting date? After the accounting date, within 14 working days, they file their returns without any monitoring, without any force, without any reminder.
Why? Because just like you said earlier, that those countries have been able to put up social security systems, social welfare systems that will encourage people to pay taxes. The government, the US government, even the UK government, for example, the UK makes a lot of money from taxes. You know, the US makes a lot of money also from taxes. But I want to, before we go into the US and the UK and the model we should adopt, or what kind of model are we adopting, I want you to take a look at the national tax policy that was approved by the Federal Executive Council sometimes in March this year, from the work that the recommendations that were done in September 2016 from the committee. What do you now think of that national tax policy? Because let me just take a look at some of the recommendations. Some of the key recommendations include that there should be one revenue agency per level of government, establishment of a tax court as an independent body to adjudicate in tax matters, lower tax rate and VAT compliance thresholds for SMEs. So there is a lower tax rate for SMEs and VAT compliance, establishment of an office of tax simplification, administrative framework for amnesty and whistleblowing as part of strategies for curbing evasion and widening the tax nets. Then number 6, INEC to mandate political parties, that caught my interest, to mandate political parties to articulate, prepare, provide, and make public their tax agenda before and during election campaigns. So as we move towards 2019, every party should come up with an agenda, not just like their manifesto, this is what we want to do concerning taxes. Now, what do you think of these recommendations as approved by the government?
Yeah, let me start by saying that the national tax policy was in place in order to complement, see to what IMF is telling Nigeria, because IMF has been saying, Nigeria, carry out a tax reform. Carry out a tax reform and make money from tax. There's so much money to make from tax. You don't need to borrow money.
So much money to make from tax,
yes.
Taxing unemployed and people.
No, let me give you an example. One of the things that gives UK or US money to is property tax. How many people in Nigeria pay property tax? That's the question.
Also have the luxury tax, which the minister has talked about.
That is one of the things. How many people pay property tax? There's so many properties, residential area, go to Guarimpa, go all over, go to everywhere. Just how many people pay property tax? How many people pay personal income tax? How many companies pay company income tax? How many companies pay capital gain tax? How many people even do deduct VAT and remit to the federal government? There was a time in their tax, they were looking to increase VAT to 10%. You say no. It's not about increasing the rate.
It's about deepening the
it's
tax
about
base.
expanding the tax base.
Yes.
Get more people to pay the VAT. If you increase it, you're only suffering those that are already paying that VAT. So the point is there is that the national tax policy, the summary of it all is to increase the tax base. How do we get more people into the tax net? Now, our model doesn't support this, because if it would have been easier if the federal government is dealing with the personal income tax. Unfortunately, that's not our model. In our own model, we have the joint tax board where the states deal with the personal income tax. So each state, go to your state, collect your personal income tax. Then the federal government is only collecting federal taxes, which is company income tax, education tax, and VAT.
Now, the other issue is that should we have a tax system that burdens the citizens? Just like I said last week or 2 weeks ago on the program, that what kind of tax model do we want to have? If we just suppose the US and the UK, which I told you earlier, you see that they have some similarities, but also
a little difference.
Yes, differences. In the US, people are encouraged to pay taxes and also hold money to spend. But here, what kind of model do we want to operate? Should we say that citizens should just make money and government should take money from the citizens as taxes? Fine, you should pay taxes, but should you also encourage businesses and individuals to have monies to spend, since you want to diversify, since you want to grow your economy, since you also you are moving towards being a production economy? What kind of model? The US or the UK? UK that will also stifle you somehow. What do you think?
No, in Nigerian tax system, allowances, benefits and allowances have been provided. Benefits and allowances have been provided, because just like in our personal income tax, your total 20% will be applied to your total earned income plus 200,000. Let me give you an example. If you earn 1 million in a year as tax, the allowance that will be granted to you will be 20% of that 1 million,
which is 200,000
plus another 200,000,
which is 400,000.
That means 400,000 will be removed from the 1 million you have earned in a year. Then 600 will be subjected to tax based on the appropriate rates, starting from 7% up to 24%. Now, the allowances have been granted. Possibly because of the socioeconomic problems, we can still look at it that these allowances are not enough. But let me tell you something. The UK tax model and the US tax model is not even looking at the poor people. they are focusing more on the rich.
Fantastic. You've just hit the nail for me on the head, because we also need to look at leeways. You actually said earlier that every Nigerian is eligible to pay taxes. Whether you make 1,000 or you make 1 billion, you need to pay taxes. So what kind of model should we begin to operate? Because in those some advanced economies, they tax the rich, isn't it?
Yes.
But there's also the argument that you are taxing the rich to help the poor. You should also encourage the poor to make money. Not all the time
always waiting
taxing the rich to
making them to be lazy.
Yes.
Now, in the US and UK model, they focus more on in Nigeria. They call it the high network individuals.
Individuals, yes. Net
Now,
worth.
like in Nigeria now, it has been reported that 214 individuals pay tax above 20 million. 214 alone. But do you know that in UK...
55% of that comes from Lagos.
Exactly. Do you know that in UK alone, over 6,000 people pay above 2 million pounds? Over 6,000 people. But 1% of top taxpayers in UK contribute to over 30% of the total tax being generated. 2.7% of the top taxpayers in US contribute to over 50% of the total tax collected.
Yes.
So now, that's why the federal government is saying we are going to focus on the high network individuals. And we are looking for them, looking at them to focus on these high network individuals. Because we have so many high network individuals in Nigeria. Yeah. Are we going to have the political will to get them to pay tax? Or some of them will intimidate you that you are fighting them politically? Or some of them will say you are ganging up against them? Or if you get to your own person, this high network individual is my friend, will you have the capacity to ask him to pay tax or you prosecute him? So I think the political will to get high network individual to pay tax is another challenge facing the federal government.
All right, you know, the tax to GDP ratio in Nigeria is 6%.
6%. Yes.
If we have that card, let's quickly put it on the screen. We've actually prepared that to see other African countries with highest tax to GDP ratio. Algeria has 35%, Seychelles 32%, South Africa 26.5%, Botswana 24.7%, Tunisia 20.5%, Namibia 22.5%, Mauritius, Mozambique 18.7%, Senegal 19%, Angola 19.7%. So Nigeria is still far behind in terms of tax to GDP ratio. Let's take a few comments coming through. Adeniran Daniel says, Norway is one of the most heavily taxed countries and the citizens are willing to pay more because the government is using it wisely. Walter Net says it isn't just more about enlightenment. The tax rate is high. A small SME struggling pays same rate as a conglomerate. It needs to be band-based. Yes, a small company pays the same thing as a Dangote, for example. Okay, taking more comment. Johnson says government at all levels should do more of tax education and enlightenment. Jeff says tenement rate is very lucrative area of tax that state and local governments are not looking at. Lagos State can raise over 1 trillion naira if it can effectively introduce to cut out property tax systems. Daniel says there are some earnings that little or no percentage should be taxed. A good example is the 18,000 naira minimum wage. Anyway, we just have like a minute to the end of the program. Okay. What is your final thoughts?
Yeah, my final input here as far as taxation is concerned is that government should begin to develop how they can provide social security for Nigerians. Nigerians need social security to ensure that they pay their tax voluntarily. If an armed robber comes to your house, you can't dial 911 for police to come. Is the problem?
No, so the police has numbers now.
They have numbers.
Yes, they have numbers.
Even some of them, when you call them, they tell you that they don't have fuel in their car. So, but we wanted a platform where Nigerians will see that this is what government is doing for us, and therefore have to pay